Hello, fellow wargamers and history buffs. Today I have another tutorial for the Bataille game system. In this particular episode, we are looking at how Cavalry Skirmishers work in the Bataille series. So here we go. So today we're back on the Dresden Vassal module, and we're looking at some French units and some Allied units that have the capability of going into skirmish mode. So typically only light cavalry and only select types of light cavalry have the capacity to go into skirmish mode. And you'll see that displayed here on the back of their counter. It will have a parenthesis around a number. So here we have, for example, the 14th Hussars. These are French units. They have this little parentheses there letting you know that they can go into skirmish mode. Same thing here with these units. And then here we have some Austrian Hussars. And then we even have some Russian Cossacks that have this too. Depending on the game series, if it's Clash of Arms, usually they'll also have these crossed swords indicating that the unit can go into skirmish mode. Now, when you want to have your light cavalry deployed in skirmish mode, it is going to be inverted so that the detailed side is face up, and it's going to be straddling a hex side. So regardless of how many increments it has, even if it's only got 1 or 2 increments, it's going to be straddling 2 hexes. And so it would be displayed like this with the backside, the detailed side up, and it's straddling 2 hexes. Now, your skirmish cavalry formation is going to have a couple of different things, slightly different as far as its orientation. So I've highlighted here, it's going to have 5 front hex sides, here where I've got these counters marking it. It's going to have 2 flank hex sides and then 1 rear hex side. The orientation, if you're using Premier, is going to be very similar, but with Premier rules, these back 2 hexes are also considered front hex sides. So that's the difference between Regs, Marie-Louise, 5th edition, 3rd edition, and the Premier. So check your rules to see specifically what the orientations are for the skirmish cavalry. Now, one of the special abilities that skirmish cavalry have is as a way of interdicting enemy infantry and artillery movement. And so here you can see I've got a notation here showing the extra movement cost that these units are going to incur moving through these zone. If you think about it, the skirmish cavalry unit isn't just in these 2 hexes. It's kind of a big cloud of horsemen out there sort of interdicting and harrying the infantry or artillery that's moving along in that general area. And as a result, then, the infantry unit and the artillery are going to be more cautious as they are moving along. And so this is replicated in the rules by it costing extra movement points for those units to move through this zone. So you can see here, adjacent to the front hexes of this skirmish cavalry unit, we have a little 3 marker. That indicates that moving into that hex would cost +3 additional movement points. So in addition to whatever other costs you might have, it's going to be an extra 3 movement points as well. Then out here in the ones that are adjacent to that, you see there's a little 2 marker. That indicates that it's a +2 to move into that hex. So for example, with this Prussian Landwehr unit, if it wants to move into this hex, it's going to spend 3 movement points, 1 movement point for the clear terrain, and 2 for the skirmish cavalry. If it wants then to move into this hex, it's going to cost an additional 4 points. Well, they don't have that much points, so they couldn't move into that hex this turn. They'd have to wait until a subsequent turn before they could move forward. Similarly here, this artillery would be impeded from moving forward as well. So this is a very good use of your skirmish cavalry, putting them in a spot where they can slow down the deployment of enemy infantry and artillery units. Now, this particular zone of interference, for want of a better word, can be negated by opposing players' cavalry, and particularly light cavalry. Any cavalry can move through this zone without suffering the movement cost, but only light cavalry moving adjacent to the skirmish cavalry is then going to negate this. And so now, if this enemy light cavalry is here, now these extra movement points are not going to be imposed on infantry and artillery moving through there. So the way to counteract skirmish cavalry is with your own light cavalry. Let's take a look at a hypothetical attack on a skirmish cavalry unit. In this particular case, it is the Allied player turn. The Prussians are going to be moving this unit forward. It uses a full 4 movement factors to go in there, and it is now adjacent. What's going to happen next is the skirmish cavalry unit can conduct combat against all of the units that are in its front hex side. Okay? So what's going to happen is it's going to use its 6 value against everyone. So here, this unit is in column, so it's during the fire phase, the skirmish attack happens. So it's going to be a 6-6, a 1-1 attack there. Here it's going to be, a 6-6 as well, or if it's in line, 6-9. And here we have units that are in skirmish order, so it's going to be, say, 6-12, or whatever the fire defense is for the skirmishers. Hits are allocated just like you would from the fire combat chart, and units that are that take a hit, and they would then be forced to make a morale check because it's an even hit or an odd hit, depending on the scenario. They're going to make that morale check just as usual. And then what can happen is the skirmish cavalry unit can then, after it's conducted this fire, it can then retreat back. So now it's not adjacent to the enemy, okay? And so therefore it does not suffer fire combat from, say, this infantry unit that's in line or this unit that's here in column, nor does it suffer an opportunity fire by pulling away. It gets to do that scot-free. It will, however, still be able to be hit by this artillery unit, since it's at a range of 3, and still be hit. Plus, there's this rifle unit here that can also shoot at it. So it can be hit, but just by units that have a range of 2 or more in this particular situation. Now, just as an enemy light cavalry unit will negate the zone of disruption of movement that a skirmish cavalry unit presents, it also will prevent the skirmish cavalry unit from executing this sort of hit and run action. So in this particular case, the Allied player has moved a light cavalry unit adjacent to the skirmisher, and so after the skirmisher does its defensive fire, then the enemy units are going to be taking their fire, and this unit will not be able to retreat like it had done previously because it is stuck there adjacent, and it doesn't have the chance to pull back. So that would be one way to negate this special ability of the skirmish cavalry unit. Now, skirmish cavalry are vulnerable to melee attacks from other cavalry, or if they've been completely hemmed in and they can't retreat, potentially by infantry. What's going to be happening is, just like with infantry that are in skirmish order, their melee value is going to be halved, what the usual rate is. And if they cannot retreat before combat, say from a charge from another light infantry, they're going to then rout. Depending on which rule system you're using, they still might have options to retreat before combat or to melee. So check the specifics for the rules that you're playing. But generally speaking, a good way to deal with the skirmish cavalry is by having your light cavalry attack it where it doesn't have an opportunity to retreat, and you're going to have a bonus because your melee value is going to be considerably higher than theirs, which is halved. Now, skirmish cavalry is best used in an area where your opponent doesn't have any light cavalry that can counter them. And they can then be used very effectively to slow down the advance of enemy infantry and artillery. So here in this particular example, the Prussians want to move up this particular way through, this gap. Well, I've got this skirmish cavalry there. It can slowly give ground. It's going to cost them points to try to move forward. Even if they unlimber their artillery, the skirmish cavalry have a better fire defense than they would if they were in line or in column. So their chances of being hit are minimized. And so it's just a great way of slowing down the enemy. Here in this particular case, they're deployed in woods. So being deployed in woods or in marshes or other types of terrain like that are in many cases allowed for skirmishers to enter, that's going to be good. It's going to improve their fire defense, and it's then going to cost even more for the enemy units to try to get in and approach them. Another place that you could put them would be somewhere here like behind a river or a stream where they've got to try to get across, and the enemy's got to spend a number of movement points already just to get across that terrain. Well, adding an extra 2 or 3 movement might make it impossible for them to move across that terrain because the movement costs are just too high. So that would be another option that you can use it for. So typically you're using it to kind of bottle up the enemy, slow them down, and make them, basically cost time to try to move forward and advance in any particular front. Now, if the enemy has light cavalry nearby, it may behoove you to either take all your units out of skirmish or to maybe leave 1 or 2 in skirmish, but leave at least 1 or more cavalry in regular order, so that way it could act to intercept the enemy's light cavalry. So in this particular case, if the Allies decided they were going to try to charge this skirmish cavalry as a way of pushing it out of the way to make way for their infantry, then your light cavalry could attempt a reaction charge and intercept them, and therefore keep up that skirmish zone that's going to then slow down the enemy. So that's another way that you could try to protect your skirmishers from enemy cavalry. Another good combination for your skirmish cavalry is to use it in conjunction with unlimbered artillery. So in this particular case, the Prussians are trying to move up into this area, and the skirmish cavalry is going to impede the movement of the infantry. And then while they're slowly coming up, this artillery piece is going to get multiple shots at them. When the skirmish cavalry moves back, the artillery can prolong backwards, and you can keep then fire up and slowly do this over time. So in conjunction with the artillery, you're getting long-distance shots on the enemy as they try to come to grips with you, and you're just slowly wearing them out over time. So this is another good use for skirmish cavalry, provided there's no light cavalry of your enemy around. Well, there's a little bit of an overview of how to use skirmish cavalry in the La Bataille system. As I'd mentioned at a few points during the video, please check the rule set that you and your play partners are using. There are some subtle differences between the different rule sets, but for the most part, the stuff that I showed you is applicable across the board. But as I said, few subtle differences in how they're used and how some of the different countermeasures are used against them. So check that out in each of the rule sets. Well, I am enjoying these little tutorials on La Bataille, and I hope you guys are too. If so, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you'd like to help out or show your appreciation, you can buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com. Link is below. If you have suggestions for a tutorial you'd like to see either on La Bataille or on one of the other one of the other games that I've covered on the channel, go ahead and make a comment below, and I'll do my best to put something up there for you. As always, keep playing games, keep having fun, and be well.